Every summer, I look forward to spending a few weeks at my grandparents' old cottage by the lake. Nestled deep in the woods, it's the kind of place where time seems to slow down. This year, however, my visit turned into something I never could have imagined. I arrived at the cottage in late July, the heat of the day still lingering as the sun began to set. The familiar creak of the wooden steps under my feet welcomed me as I entered. My grandparents had passed the previous year, and this was my first visit alone. It was peaceful, or so I thought. The first couple of days were blissfully uneventful. I spent my time fishing, swimming, and reading old books that lined the shelves. On the third night, though, I woke up to the sound of tapping. It was faint at first, like the branches of a tree brushing against the window, but there were no trees close enough to reach. I brushed it off as the wind, though the air had been still all evening. The next day, I took a hike through the woods, following a narrow path that led deeper into the forest. I had walked this trail many times, but that day felt different. The dense canopy overhead seemed to swallow the light, and an eerie silence hung in the air. As I walked, I had this unsettling feeling that I was being watched. I turned several times expecting to see someone, but found only the shadows. Midnight came and the tapping began again, but this time it was accompanied by a soft whispering. It was incomprehensible, like a voice carried on the wind. I mustered the courage to peer out the window, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the edge of the woods, barely visible in the moonlight. My heart pounded as the figure slowly turned and melted back into the trees. I barely slept, my mind racing with fear and confusion. Determined not to be driven away by my own imagination, I decided to investigate during the day. But the woods, usually so inviting, now felt sinister and unwelcoming. As I walked the trail again, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small, weathered cabin hidden among the trees, its door slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of me, and I approached. Inside, the cabin was empty, save for a dusty table and a few scattered papers. One paper caught my eye. It was an old newspaper article about a missing person, dated over 50 years ago. The picture was faded, but the resemblance to the shadowy figure was uncanny. Chilled to the bone, I left the cabin and hurried back to the cottage. That night, the tapping was gone, and I felt a strange sense of relief. I packed my things the next morning, eager to return to civilization and leave the eerie feeling of being watched behind. As I locked the door and turned to leave, I glanced back at the woods one last time, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw a familiar shadow among the trees. Perhaps it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I wanted to believe it was just the imagination of a lonely summer night. But deep down I knew that something or someone was still there, watching, waiting for the next unsuspecting visitor to the old lake cottage.